Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Jim Marshall. And I'm so happy that you are here and said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
Great. Happy to see you.
Oh, I'm happy too. And I would like to introduce you to the audience. You are a human development engineer with over 50,000 hours dedicated to exploring human potential. Educated at the Jesuit military prep school and holding a Bachelor of Science cum laude, he blends classical education with studies in transformational and holistic arts and sciences. Marshall is the creator of Septemics. You have to help me how to pronounce this. Septemics and
Yes,
yes,
Septemics.
Septemics and various consciousness expanding systems with expertise spanning psychology, philosophy, science, and more. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Jim Marshall.
Thank you.
And my first question is, you've spent over 50,000 hours studying human potential. Can you share the key insights you've gained about unlocking human development?
Well, there's two answers to that. The knowledge that I have as a human development engineer is extremely sophisticated and vast and well beyond the scope of this discussion. But what that led me to was the discovery of Septemics, which is extremely beneficial to anyone who takes advantage of it. I discovered Septemics just incidentally as a result of working with my clients over a period of 40 years. The information simply appeared in front of me, and I took note of it and eventually developed it into a philosophical science, which is based on natural law.
Yes, I see. So you were open-minded and you said yes to the opportunity and the intuition that was showed to you.
Right.
Mhm,
I wouldn't say intuition is a relevant word.
mhm.
I'm an engineer, so I observed what I saw and I wrote it down. Uh, and so over a long period of time, I came to realize I had discovered a new subject that would really help people. And it does, because some version of Septemics has been out for 28 and a half years, and I've been watching people use this. People get this. This is not obscure. And the reason they get it is it's natural law. If you can recall the first time you saw the Pythagorean theorem, you looked at it for a minute and said, oh, yeah, this makes sense. I get it. Or the periodic table, you look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is cool. I see hydrogen is here, helium's over here, lithium comes next. And, it all makes sense. And you get it. And that's how this subject is. The way people experience the book is they look at it and they say, oh, yeah, I see. This makes sense to me. Yeah, this is right. Because anything that's based on natural law is intuitive.
Wow. I understand. And I love how you pointed out it's a law that you discovered, or you worked with the law, you discovered something completely new that makes sense and that works.
Right.
Mhm.
Because you
Work.
have to understand, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool engineer. Okay? I was accepted into engineering school at age 16. I was always an engineer. I mean, that's who I am as a person. And to engineers, we are only interested in results and facts. That's it. I went to an engineering school. There were 2,000 students there. We were all the same. Practical people. Now, to engineering, opinions and beliefs are utterly irrelevant. Now, everybody has them, but it has nothing to do with engineering. So I just observed what I saw, wrote it down. But let me tell you how I discovered this, because the specifics of it will tell you really what this is. So when I was first accepted into engineering school, I thought I was going to be engineering physical things, such as airfoils, motors, and electrons and things like that. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche. So I then had, and the reason for that is, I should explain, is because it is the area of greatest mystery, of greatest unknown, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people. Don't understand the husband, don't understand the son, don't understand the boss, don't understand the next door neighbor or whatever. That is the main problem that most people have. We're not starving to death anymore, or dying of all kinds of diseases. I mean, life is kind of under control, except we don't understand people. And that's why more than 50% of the marriages in the United States end in divorce. And more than 50% of the people in the United States aren't even married in the first place because they don't understand people. So I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients of every description. And I started to notice my clients all improved as a result of my work, but incidentally, I could predict the outcome of the session. Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, I came to realize that the client was at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed, and that as a result of our interaction, he would go to the next level up, and that would happen. So that happened in the sessions thousands and thousands of times. And every time it occurred, it verified my hypothesis, because the client didn't know anything about any of this. I didn't tell anything to my client. They came in, they said, I have a drinking problem, or I have a marital problem. Okay, tell me about it, and I helped them. They didn't know anything about what I was doing, how I was doing it, what I was thinking, or anything like that. So the fact that it appeared and worked thousands and thousands of times told me there's something to this. Now, I'll tell you something else. After I would observe it in the session, I would then go out of the session, of course, and into the real world, and I would see the same thing right in front of me in the real world everywhere I went. I would see people manifesting these same phenomena. So that would further verify it. You have to realize there's no theory of septemics. This was all based on direct empirical observation. And I just wrote it down. So by 1995, I had about 32 scales that I had simply observed and recorded. Now, there's one scale in particular that had 6 levels that I had been using for decades that I absolutely knew was correct. And one day I was pondering a difficult client, and this client, I realized, was at a level on that scale that I had not previously observed. Now, when I saw that 7th level, it was obvious to me where to insert it. That was not a question. I knew right away where to insert it. And when I inserted the 7th level into the 6th level scale, that scale then manifested mathematically. So now you have to understand what this means. I took 26 semesters of math and loved every minute of it. So I think in math. So it's a very real thing to me. It's not just something on paper that you do with a pen, okay? It's in the phenomena. So the whole point of math is that you start with a formula or an equation and you coax data out of it. That is how Einstein found E equals mc squared. Everyone in the math and science community knows how he found it. It's no secret. So when you have a body of data jump out at you like that as a result of making a change in it, that is a mathematical manifestation. And it went instantaneously from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a body of data. So I suddenly had this whole body of data relevant to the scale that I had been working with. And I said, whoa, this is got math embedded in it. And if you look at any of these scales, you can see they fit together like a Chinese puzzle. So they had math embedded in them the same way that the Fibonacci sequence has math embedded in it. So then I said, I wonder how many of these other scales are actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way, because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients in making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, I then looked at all the rest of the scales. And in a short period of time, each went to 7 levels. And as it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales that I had simply observed that all had mathematics embedded in them. And I said to myself, this looks like a new subject. I never saw this before or anything like this before. So then I thought, my next thought was, I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which was what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions. If I put this in a book and get it out so people can have the data and use it. So I'm going to have to write a book.
Yes.
So the first draft of the book was completed in December of 95. And I sent it out in a transcript form to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And in a short period, they all responded very positively. They had different responses, but distinctly positive responses. They loved it. Now, I have to tell you, since then, 28 years have gone by. Nobody who has ever read this book has ever said anything like, I don't get this doesn't make any sense, or anything like that. Nobody says that. What they say is, oh, yeah, this makes sense. See? And they're able to use it almost immediately because it makes sense to them. So, from when I got the response from the colleagues this was about like January of 96, I spent the next 25 years working on this book. And the reason for that is you have to realize, first I had to discover the phenomena, the septemic phenomena, and I pretty much already told you how that occurred, although I did find 3 more scales as I was writing the book. Then I had to take this phenomena and I had to use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Now you have to understand, the product of a scientist is a theory, like the theory of evolution or the theory of relativity. The product of an engineer is a thing that works. A cell phone, an air conditioner, a refrigerator, an airplane, right? This thing had to work for everyone all the time. Okay? So it took 20 years for me to develop this into a system that worked all the time for everyone. But the most time-consuming factor was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average reader. Because when you are teaching a brand new subject, that is always difficult for the person because the person has no frame of reference. Now, look, I tried for years to fit this into some pre-existing niche. I thought, well, maybe this is part of psychology or sociology or philosophy. Can't be done because it's a different subject. It is its own subject. And trying to fit this into some other subject is like trying to get an elephant into a Volkswagen. Can't be done. So then I said, well, I guess this is a new subject, And so it's not easy to get people to grasp a new subject. So I was very careful to express this in a way that would make sense to the average reader of English. So, so the end product is this book is for anyone who can read English reasonably well and wants to improve himself or others. That's who it's for. Now, some people might think, well, everyone wants to improve himself or others. And I'm sorry, that's not true. There are all kinds of categories of people who are not interested in improving themselves or others. And if you actually deal with those people, as I have at times, you can see that. Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, professional criminals, war criminals, terrorists, torturers, serial murderers. There's all kinds of categories of people. Mentally ill people, you see, psychotics. So it's not everybody. It's people who want to improve themselves or others. So I went out of my way to make this very user-friendly so that it would make sense to people and they could get it right away. And I know I succeeded at that because I've been seeing people react to this for 28 and a half years since the first draft came out. People get it. Now, several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And I have to tell them in all candor, having gone to school for 28 years, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before. But I can tell you this, each of these scales, there are 35 scales, is expressed in what you might call a table or a spreadsheet. And it is, in that sense, similar to the periodic table of elements, but for the corresponding subject. So if you let me tell you the names of the scales, you'll then know exactly what subjects are addressed, and you'll see that I have covered human phenomena. May I do that? Takes about a
Yeah,
minute. Okay, hold on a
I'm
second.
curious.
Let me just get my notes out here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so it's easier if I just read this to you. So there are 24 individual scales, meaning they apply primarily to an individual, and 11 group scales, meaning they apply to groups. So these are the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales, the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself can dramatically improve the life of the reader. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know about a person is the person's motivation. That's how the police solve crimes. They look at somebody with a motive, right? Somebody is murdered, right? They say, well, this guy has no motive. Well, why should we look at him? Then they say, wait a minute, there's an insurance policy for $250,000, goes to the wife. Oh, she becomes a suspect. You see, it doesn't mean she did it, but they look there. So knowing someone's motivation is extremely important and valuable, right? So you could take this scale and you could say, what is my husband's motivation toward me? What is my son's motivation toward me? What is my mother's motivation toward me? What is my boss's motivation toward me? And you could keep doing this for everybody you know. You could use this 300, 400, 500 different times, even on people you don't know anymore or people who are deceased. gee, I wonder what my grandfather's motivation toward me. And you can find it, even though he's deceased, because you know him. See? Then you could use it on the reverse vector and say, what is my motivation toward my boss? What is my motivation toward my next door neighbor? What is my motivation toward my boyfriend, et cetera, et cetera. So you could use it another 3 or 4 or 500 ways. So on both vectors, this is vast. And by the time you know the motivations of everybody in your life, that changes the way you think about things. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a couple that's been dating for 2 years and they're thinking about getting married. So wouldn't it be smart for them to ask the question, why does this person want to marry me?
Yes.
Isn't that a reasonable question? Now, I'm not saying to ask the other person. I'm saying, get the book, look at the scale, all right? Because look, this guy's been going out with this girl for 2 years. He knows all about her, right? They've had maybe 50 incidents together, one way or another.
Yes.
So he goes down the scale and he can see if he is perceptive what her motivation is. Now, maybe he decides her motivation is level 1, which is love. Oh, that's a good motivation. That's a good reason to marry somebody. She wants to marry me because she loves me, right? But maybe that's not what he finds. Maybe as he's doing this, he says, now that I think about this, I think she wants to marry me because I drive a Mercedes. I live in a $15 million condo. I fly my own Learjet. I have a 60-foot yacht, and I have $16 million in the bank. Now, that's a different motivation. That's level 4, money. Now, I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm just saying some people are money motivated. So he might look at this and say, well, yeah, but I still love her and I want to marry her anyway. That could happen. But that might not happen. He might say, you know what? I don't want to marry a gold digger. I want to marry somebody who loves me for myself and break off the relationship. Now, in that second case, you might think he's going to be upset. And I guarantee you he will not. He will be relieved. He just dodged a bullet. And he will thank you. He'll say, Caroline, thank you for showing me this because I'm glad I got rid of this woman before I wound up owing her $20,000 a month in alimony. You see? So there's no judgment involved in this. It's just seeing what's there. It's a way to see what's there. So now, did you ever notice how many elderly, unattractive men are married to beautiful young women?
Yes.
Every once in a while, I look at this guy. How could this guy have this wife? What sense does this make? Well, no, I'll tell you what sense it makes. The 23-year-old beauty queen gets a Corvette, a credit card, a diamond ring, a pearl necklace, and a mink coat.
Yes.
The 55-year-old overweight guy gets a 23-year-old beauty queen for a wife. See, he doesn't care if she's a gold digger. He's got plenty of money. So for him, it works. You see? First guy drops her. The second guy says, that's fine. So she comes to him and says, honey, I want to go to Vegas for the weekend. He says, okay, here's $5,000. Have a good time. And when she comes back, she's happy. So
Yes.
it could work, you see? So this is just, it's very specific to the person. What is this person manifesting? And then you sort of know what to do with it. You can make a choice. Now, for me, this goes on all the time. I bump into people both online and in 3 dimensions, and I see they're at certain levels on certain scales.
Yes.
So I'll bump into some guy, and I'll see he's very low on, let's say, the scale of basic purposes. And I say, whoa, I'm not going to mess with this. Okay? Have a nice day, goodbye, and I move on. Okay? So because of that, I can absolutely guarantee if you study and use this book, it will prevent catastrophes, dilemmas, bankruptcies, divorces, indictments, lawsuits, fistfights, etc., etc., etc. Because when you bump into one of these downscale people, you know what you're looking at.
Yes. Oh, I
Right?
understand.
Yeah. So, for example, on the scale of basic purposes, Adolf Hitler is at level 7. His basic purpose was to destroy.
Yeah.
Now, before I understood that, and I studied World War II and Germany and Hitler in general, I had some difficulty understanding it because I'm a scholar of military science. And so there are things in military science that all the students in military science in the world know. Certain things you do and certain things you don't do. And there are reasons for it, okay? So all of us who come out of military programs know these things. So I would see him violating these things and I'd say, why is he doing this? You see? And until I discovered this material and I figured out, he's a destructive person. He wasn't only destructive to the Allies. I mean, that would make some sense. He was destructive to Germany, to the Wehrmacht, to his own family. He's just a destructive person. Now, fortunately, there aren't too many of those. But when I saw that, then I understood why he did the things that he did. Now it all makes sense to me. You see, before when I tried to study World War II, there was a lot of questions. Why would he do that? And now, okay, now I see why he did it. So that is how this works. You can look at a person, you can find they're at a certain level, and you can understand it. For instance, somebody who's at level 5 on the scale of choice, that person wants another person to make his choice. You know, like in the old Soviet Union, they told you where you were going to live, what school you were going to go to, what career you were going to have, if you were going to have a car, and if you could have a car, when you would get the car, and what car. Somebody decided. There are people who want someone else to decide for them. Now, this does not make sense to most of us because most of us are above level 5. We want to make our own choices. You know, like in the United States, they're going through a thing now. We all have to have an electric car. I don't want somebody telling me I have to have an electric car. I mean, if I want to buy an electric car, it's because I want an electric car, not because they tell me I have to have one. You see, I don't want somebody telling me what to do with my own money. So I'm at a different level on the scale of choice. I'm at a higher level. So you could look at some guy and you can say, well, you know, there are people who voted for Hitler and voted for Mussolini and voted for Stalin and voted for. Why would they do that? Well, if you see somebody at level 5 on the scale of choice, that's why they do it. They don't have to make a choice. It's too hard for them. And there are
That's
people who
true.
just can't do it.
And yeah, I studied that as well. And they had no choice because there was only one party. And of course, you know this, that they were assassinated when they were not voting for Hitler, for example. And I want to thank you for our interview because our time is up now. But I learned so much, and I would like to that you would tell us once again the name of your book, where we can find you, because when people reach out to you, you know, and please reach out to Jim. He's amazing. He has a large knowledge that not many people have. So then we can connect to each other. Tell us, please, about your book.
Okay. So the book is called Septemics. That's Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And it's sold wherever books are sold. But I invite your people to go to my website, which is septemics.com, where you can see what many readers have said, what many journalists have written, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself. And there's even a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics that you can listen to that explains the subject to a new person in about 15 minutes.
Wow, thank you so much. I put the link in the show notes, of course, and please reach out to Jim. Check the website. It's amazing. We will learn so much from you. And thank you for our interview today.
Thank you, Caroline. It was a pleasure.
Thank you and see you in the next episode.